As we look forward to our next segment, it is with immense pleasure that I welcome on stage our speakers. May I request all of you to please put your hands together as we now have the pleasure of having Talha bin Mohsin, founder and filmmaker at Better Late Than Never Films. Let's hear a round of applause for a creative mind joining us here. Let's also put our hands together for Mr. Arun, Iyer, founder and creative partner, Spring Marketing Capital. Moderating this session will be Aishwarya, Javalgekar, creative director, Bound India. So may I request all of you to please put your hands together for our amazing speakers here. Thank you, Aishwarya, for being a part of this session and for weaving it together. We look forward to you creating that beautiful balance and bringing to us that energy right here. All yours.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone.
All right, can everyone hear me? Yes, okay, perfect. Okay, so like we mentioned, so what we'll be talking about today, right now, is long-lasting brands, right? And what makes brands successful. So I was thinking before we get started with the tough questions, maybe we can do thoda sa like a nostalgia, feel-good question. So, everyone here is a professional, but ultimately we are all consumers first, right? So maybe we can talk about a particular campaign or a brand that you remember from your childhood that has still stayed with you, or maybe the brand is still something that's relevant in terms of long lasting.
So, I think there are many that have stayed with me. But one brand which has really stuck in my head is Rose Khao Ande. The whole NECC campaign, I don't know if how many of y'all would remember. Sunday ho ya Monday, Rose Khao Ande.
Yeah.
I think it kind of, I think it's unbelievable that even today everybody's like ande khane chahiye. It's good protein. It's gotten into our being. It stayed with us for all these years. So I think that's one campaign which I can never forget.
Yeah, definitely, perfect for long-lasting impact, right? Talha?
No, like Arun said, many ads, because we are creative people, so we also studied those ads. So we have a different reason. But from our childhood, one ad which always stayed with me was Dhara Jalebi ad, where the kid leaves the home and then, his Ramu Kaka reminds him of ke ghar pe jalebi bani hai, and he comes back. So, as a kid, I used to think कि मैं अगर घर के छोड़ के जाऊंगा, so my mom will make jalebis. So
The kid does a cartwheel, right?
yeah. So that's how ads, impact you. The good ads. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, when we are talking about long-lasting success, right, I think obviously the first fear that any marketing or advertising professional has is, okay, they do a campaign and it fails. But the second fear is, that one campaign works, but then it doesn't consistently stay successful. So, what is sort of the difference between coming up with something that's like a one-hit wonder? Yeah, tukke se chal gaya. But then, what is the difference between that versus having something that consistently is working and building on top of that?
So, and I can go, and I think it's a very relevant question in this day and age because we are living in a day and age where we are seeing one-hit wonders a lot more than we used to. We are seeing brands actually putting out pieces of work where the piece of work is remembered, but for what brand nobody remembers. What that brand does, nobody remembers. So I think it's important to, and I think I heard some of the panelists before me speak about saying, what is the core of the brand? Stay with that, stay consistent. Of course, you must entertain, you must make sure that it's something that touches people, moves people in some form. But if it is without a strong foundation, if it's without a strong base, then it just becomes aimless because it's very, very short-lived. And I've seen this personally. I've worked on a brand for 20 years. And when we launched Surf Excel back in the day with Daag Achhe Hain, it was 2005. We're in 2025, and that's still relevant. And it's really nice to see brands stay the course. So.
Yeah, so one practice, we had was that, all the big ideas have legs. So first try and crack 2, 3 of the pieces with the same idea. and try and crack a 360-degree campaign whether the client has asked you or not. To see whether, see, because all the big ideas have legs. You can do multiple communications on that. Like, for example, we worked on one ICICI Lombard campaign.
Yeah.
When we got the account in 2015, they told us that, they want the same baseline, which is Nibhai Wade. So what are we doing new? So a very important question to us was that, whatever we crack, whether it's true or not. So from taking from Nibhai Wade, we cracked the idea of do the difficult. And the DNA behind that idea was that making promises is very easy, but keeping them is very difficult. So we stand for do the difficult, fulfill your promises. And then we cracked multiple pieces on that and executed just 2 pieces at that point of time, but we had multiple pieces to see whether this idea have legs or not.
Right. Yeah, and I think both of you have touched upon, another important thing, which is that emotional connection, right? Where both of the campaigns that you mentioned have something where the message is something that is so, like, there is, there are ads where there is more about humor, it's more about something else, but something that has a very strong emotional resonance, which is why it stays with, the audience or the customers for such a long time. So can we speak a little bit about, how to create that emotion? Because I think all brands are trying to have some emotional impact, right? Either they use humor, either they use fear. But how do you create something which has that nuance of emotion that also stays with them, let's say from childhood to, when they're much older?
Yeah, no, I get it. I think, and I think it's not restricted to just advertising, I feel. And I think, and as we are evolving, as a human race, I think we are going from physical products to digital products, right? Where what you touch and feel is, like, for example, there was I think Chandan from Zepto here. Like, you touch and feel Zepto on a phone, right? So it's a tech platform that is enabling stuff. So I think what we need to recognize is that people care more. People don't care about what you make. People care about how you make them feel.
Yeah.
And that's very important for brands to recognize that how are you making them feel, and that you can make them feel whatever you want. You can make them laugh, you can make them cry, you can make them any emotion that you want them to feel. But it's very important for a brand to choose a position and say, you know what, at every touch point, wherever my brand's going to be experienced, this is how I want the consumer to feel. And when that stays consistent, when they, if a brand wants to inspire somebody, and if they get inspired at every touch point, which I think very successfully, or if you want somebody to feel in awe of you, which a lot of us feel for Apple. So, it's how you make them feel, not just what you make.
I guess the question would be in terms of execution. How do you know that the audience will feel what you want them to feel? Like, you might have an idea in mind, okay, we have decided we want the audience to feel this particular emotion across all touch points. But because so many of us are, in the actual execution of those campaigns.
Filmmaker will answer.
Exactly. So how do you make sure that
I've
the audience is
recently
feeling that
become a
emotion?
filmmaker, but I'll come from the, advertising point of view only, from a creative side, that, it has to be about your consumer, not about the product, because no one cares about the product. It is how you're, like the old saying that, never promote the features, always promote the benefits. What it will do to your, do for your consumer. So it's about that. So it has to be centered around your customer. It has to, the stories have to be around, it should, make them feel either joy or nostalgia, or even make them dream, what it's going to do for you. So like he said, Apple. So globally, their tonality is same, their language is same. The examples they pick, like for example, the new India ad, which is the auto rickshaw ad. If they would have done it in, let's say, America, it would have been about monster trucks. Or in Middle East, it would have been about, Toyota SUVs climbing the desert.
Yeah.
So tonality remains same, the cultural nuances keep changing. For the consumer, it has to be, they should feel that it's their story, or it could be them.
To add to that, I think sometimes what happens is, as people from within the company, we get very caught up because there's so much that goes into making something. Like, again, to go back to the Apple example, most of us in this room will say, "Arey, Apple iPhone 16 la raha hai, some camera has changed and or 1 lakh rupees extra le rahe hain." That's our emotion, but for
Yeah.
them, they have engineered it so much and they've fallen in love with the product. But you also have to recognize what the consumer is feeling, and how do you make sure that okay, this is how they're feeling. How do you present it to them?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think, one more thing that got mentioned a little bit was looking at new formats, right? So if we talk about innovation, because we're talking about building campaigns over the years, but obviously, technology changes. There are new channels for marketing advertising. So how can people sort of keep up with those channels? For example, Talha, I wanted to mention the video game campaign, right? That you sort of incorporated for ICICI Lombard. So how do you sort of, also come up with these ideas of, okay, here is a new channel that is untapped, that we should approach in the first place and try out. And if it's a channel where there isn't, a lot of stuff done earlier, so you don't really have this template or format of, okay, ye chalta hai, ye nahi chalta hai. So how do you sort of jump into that and create something?
See, our job is to surprise our customers and delightfully surprise them. No one buys a magazine or a newspaper to read ads. No one watches television to watch ads. Because the moment an ad comes or commercial break, they change the channel, they switch the channel. So now with the time, which has changed, there are multiple areas where we can catch them. But one thing is, there that technology and everything, these are just tools. Idea and your brand tonality and the DNA, the core of the core values should remain the same no matter where you go, whether it's a video game. So we did that with Do the Difficult. So everywhere we went, whether it's like those topical days like World Heart Day or anything, or even the emotional ads. The end message was do the difficult, fulfill the promises. Whether it's a video game or it's a post or it's a TVC, that doesn't matter because all these are mediums, you know. So yeah, I think that's it.
But there's also some decision making in choosing the mediums, right? When you're building a campaign, because for example, you are tapping into a lot of channels which are more for a digital native audience. So I guess the question becomes at that decision making point, right? Where they're choosing it, this is the message or this is the emotion, but these are the channels we should focus on in order to push that campaign ahead. So how do those decisions get made? Maybe even Arun, you have.
No, and I think see the truth of the matter is that, and it's horses for courses. It's there is no one answer to this, and I also believe that to some extent we also need to rethink how we are defining our audiences, because audiences no longer are straight jacketed. This is the amount of money they're making, so they have access to this, because people with different from different strata of society, but having access to the same things, right? So I think technology has also been a leveler from that point of view. So I think it's about understanding the mindset of the set of people that you're talking to, what interests them, and where can you, in a non-intrusive way. I think we've also moved, as a generation, we've moved from being bombarded with advertising, which was seen as a necessary evil because television, it made television cheap. It made the newspaper cheap. And we have moved now to a place which is very private. So how do you do it without being intrusive, without making it seem, because people don't like overtly selling messages anymore. How do you become a part of their life? How do you become a part of, how do you integrate your brand into something that they are interested in and not just selling yourself out there? I think that's become the game. And then of course the channels and mediums you can pick as per depending on what kind of reach you want to get.
Yeah. No, and absolutely. I think you have to be more and more creative because also consumers are becoming so averse to even watching ads, right? Or like when they are
I keep saying
consuming
this,
content.
every bad ad on YouTube is the best ad for YouTube Premium.
I agree. I got the YouTube Premium subscription and I'm very happy with not having to watch ads. But yes, because people people are willing to pay money to just not have to watch ads, especially within the content they're consuming, because they're also making so many choices about the content they're consuming. So I think definitely being more and more creative. And I think what I want to also touch upon is maybe now what is also happening is people are also resonating with brands in a way where they want the brands to emulate certain values, right? Like if I believe, like which could be like social values,
A
cultural
bit like
values.
us, right? We are talking, we don't even know if they're interested or not. So,
Yeah. Maybe they can tell us. Maybe we can get like a show of hands of people who are interested, who are finding this conversation good. Okay.
thank
We have
you.
3.
Thank you. The bar is open for you.
But yeah, so when you're dealing with consumers who have very clear value sets where they say we believe in this, we don't believe in this, and then we want to support brands and buy from brands who we think match our value set, which could be like environment friendly, which could be organic, whatever it might be. But there are so many of these. So then how do you also as a brand maybe create that persona which matches the values of your consumer?
So I think you're right. I think a lot of people look for, okay, this kind of, this brand understands me, gets me. The brand's values resonate. But
Also, sorry, just to add,
time's up, by the way. Huh?
values resonate, but also where they feel like if I use this brand, that is telling people something about me as a person.
It does, yeah. A lot of people do feel that, and it's important. But that I don't think is new. It's been there. I think we are just seeing people express it because of a medium like social media, where they're able to express it. Yeah. I think it existed even before. People always gravitated towards brands where they felt a resonance with in some form or the other. It's just that now people are a lot more vocal about it.
Also, you need to see whether it's true or not, because it works both ways. People also write against it. We used to have this thing that, I wrote about it also, that purpose campaign is the new mantra right now. A lot of clients are doing it because their competition is doing it. Ad agencies are doing it because this is what's winning us awards.
Right.
So what is the real purpose behind the purpose? Why should people believe you that you stand for this? So we need to keep asking that question and arrive at the right answer, that why me? So you get, because people are really smart right now. They are also reading a lot of content, across the internet. So they know whether it's true or not.
Exactly. They can go read up and know if just because you're saying in a marketing campaign that we do XYZ, they can go check and see whether the brand actually does it.
Yeah, so on one hand, you are helping underprivileged children. On the other hand, your factories are dumping chemical into the lakes. So people know about both the things. So you have to be very careful what you stand for.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, last question.
We should exit before the second bell. The previous, they got the second bell. We should do better than them.
Yes. Oh shit, this is the second bell. Maybe we can do one last quick question. Okay, so can we?
We've got the third.
No? 30 seconds?
This is the final warning.
30 seconds. Okay. Both of you have been in the industry for more than 20 years. Now both of you have left, working a salary job at an agency to start your own thing. Just how has the experience been, or why did you do it? In 5 words, go.
Midlife crisis.
I don't want to do multiple rounds of, scripting and everything. So I just told everyone that once you've sold the script, come to me.
Okay. Great. Okay, I think that's the time we have. Yeah, thank you so much, Arun and Talha both.
Thanks
and I hope
Thank
the
you.
audience found
Thank
it
you.
helpful.